Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make tiny improvements to your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon. Hello and welcome to this episode. Today is an interview with the incredible Amanda Rae. She is the COO of 17 Hats. And you know I love 17 Hats. It runs my business for me. It has made me so much money. So I was almost a little bit starstruck getting to interview Amanda. She knows the ins and outs of this entire platform. And we not only talk about why it's so valuable to the balloon industry, but she solves a problem that I have in the interview. Like, you can hear her chatting through 17 Hats, and it was a light bulb moment for me. It will for sure change the way that I do business, specifically the way that I engage with repeat customers and go after those annual events. So there is so much goodness in this interview. If you're just starting out with 17 Hats, we talk about where to begin. And if you are like a pro user and you've been using it for years, there's stuff in here for you as well. So enjoy this interview with Amanda Rae from 17 Hats. If you have not started using 17 Hats yet, there is a link in the show notes where you can get started, and I swear to you, it is the number one reason why I am able to run a successful balloon business with very limited help, because I have 17 Hats, my little robot assistant, doing all of the hard work for me. So let's take a break, hear from our sponsors, and then get right into this interview.
How many Google reviews do you have? Hi, I'm Jeff at Asset Lab, and did you know that we recommend businesses get to 40 5-star reviews on Google My Business before they even start asking for reviews on other platforms? If you're facing competition, we work with balloon decor companies every day, and we can help you figure out what's the right thing to do for you so that you can get more leads, more phone calls, more contact form submissions. Learn more about us at assetlab.us.
All right, welcome to the podcast, Amanda Rae of 17 Hats. This is like, you're my biggest celebrity to date.
It's so funny. Thank you, Sarah.
No, I mean, like, seriously, I'm so grateful, and I know I'm speaking for other balloon professionals, because your program, 17 Hats, I mean, like, I still am a one-woman show, and I say 17 Hats is like my employee of the month every month. It's the only reason that I'm able to still be on my own. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, I am. Thank you for having me on. It is my pleasure to be here. I am super excited to talk to you, and I am so excited about everything that you're doing in your business and all the great things you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's back up. Can we just talk about 17 Hats? Like, where did it come from? Like, what was the need in the industry? Where do you fit into that story? Like, tell us about you.
Absolutely. Well, Donovan, my partner in crime, he actually created 17 Hats with our co-founder, Resa. And so they created 17 Hats. It was launched in about October 2014. But the idea, they started working on it in about 2011. There was an article in the New York Times in either August or September, early September, late August of 2011. And it's an article called Maybe Time for Plan C. It's a really interesting article, but mainly it talks about Plan A that people had was workforce. You go into the workforce and you're working and you're doing your grind, just as many of our 17 Hats solopreneurs started as well, right? Everybody started in the workforce. But then they had this passion and they got tired of the workforce and they were like, man, maybe it's time for a Plan B. Well, what is a Plan B? Their Plan B was taking that passion and growing it into a solopreneur business, right? But then once they got started and they became successful, they became very overwhelmed with all the business side of business, right? All the paperwork, all the contracts, all the communications, all the scheduling, all of that stuff. So as their success grew, also their chaos grew and their overwhelm grew. And so that maybe it's time for Plan C, right? The author kind of left plan C to be interpreted as you wish. You can interpret it as going, completely burn out and going back to the workforce. But Donovan interpreted it as plan C is combining some type of software, right? Some type of business that he's going to create with these solopreneurs plan B to make something extraordinary, to help them leap over that overwhelm and that chaos and really propel them into success. And that is where 17 Hats started, as really that's where the idea came from. And so that's when they started thinking about 17 Hats and started pushing through with its development.
That's amazing. And was it always intended for creatives?
It was always intended for service driven businesses.
Okay.
So specifically either if as long as you were providing your service, that is what it was intended for. It was not intended for like e-commerce or anything like that. So it just found that the creatives really launched onto it and really loved it. Prior to 17 Hats, Donovan had a printing company and a photo organizing company. And so we had a base from there that pulled over to 17 Hats. So it kind of, because he's had multiple companies, as people have just kind of followed him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it kind of picked up first in the photography industry because we already had a base of people there. And then it spread from there. So now we have, oh my gosh, just about every service driven industry.
Yeah, what are other industries? Like, I always think balloons are so weird, but like, really, we're kind of just in line with like florists and party planners. Like, what are some of the oddball industries that you started
Oh,
seeing?
so I think the most interesting one is crime scene cleanup people.
No way!
Yeah. Crime
I
scene
mean, I guess, yeah,
cleanup.
contracts and you're showing up at a certain time, you're just cleaning dead bodies.
You're cleaning something. So that's an interesting one. We have a company that is actually making really good traction now in headlines. It's Rent a Chicken, to
What is
where
it?
rent a chicken. You can rent chickens for the laying season.
Oh my
So instead of
gosh.
going and buying eggs, so we have chicken rentals. I mean, we have the professional clowns and the professional mimes. We have fence building. There is a group of band. So they create the marching performance. So they're the designers for band
Oh, sure.
marching performance directors, I guess.
Yes.
um, so they use it because they come in to high schools and their contract as well. You even have some bigger chain restaurants that are using it for their some volunteer work or party planning. So like when parties come in, they use 17 Hats to deal with that portion of it. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Obviously you have the wedding industry,
Yeah.
but everything else is quite interesting of what can be had.
That's really cool. I feel like the biggest thing that I learned from owning my business is like the superpower of making money. And I feel like 17 Hats has helped me learn that. It's like if I lose my passion for balloons, like I can start something else like literally overnight. And that's kind of an empowering feeling that it's just like, wait, I know how to do this. Like I know how to run whatever the service is.
Right. And I think that's the most, I think it's a super powerful statement because at the end of the day, and this is something it takes so hard for me to get into people's heads sometimes, is business is business is business. We all capture leads. We all have to get paid. We all have contracts we have to sign. We all have to fulfill. So when you're looking at a service driven business, whether you're a balloon artist or photographer or wedding officiant or the rental chicken or the crime scene cleanup people, we're all doing the same steps,
Right.
right? So if you end up morphing or not morphing, but like changing of going, okay, I want to now do this or do that, or I'm going to hand my balloon business over. I'm going to hire somebody to run my balloon business and I'm going to go start another business. You can do it
Right. Right.
because
Totally.
you've learned the business basics, right? You know what you're doing and you have the system to help you do that, which is so powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I one of the things that I struggle with that I'm curious how you guys deal with is um like with the podcast and with now growing a little bit, it's like I feel myself wanting to be everything to everybody, and that's just not a reality. That actually kind of hurts. That hurts your audience, you know. So how do you resist trying to morph 17 hats into everything for everybody? Because I remember I made a request and it was like, oh, if there could be like an e-commerce, and you were awesome at just being like, that's not what this is. Or like, I know there's been other people that are like, I really wanted to just like manage our employees, and you're like, that's not what this is. Like this, it's not that. So how do you resist that urge?
Yeah, it's really hard because obviously we're people pleasers. I think anybody in the service industry is very much so a people pleaser, and we want to serve and we want to help. And so by nature, myself, Donovan, Raisa, we very much so want to serve and want to help. But we also know that the more we add to the system, the more complex the system is, right? So we've kind of become that gatekeeper going, do you really need that? Is that really going to make you more money? Because I do believe that as a solopreneur, you're so in the weeds of thing. You're like, if I only had this, or if I only had this, or if I only had this, right? But if you only had those things, a lot of those things aren't going to make you more money, right? So when we look at 17 hats, we are looking at going, what is actually beneficial? What is actually going to save them time? What is actually going to make them money? What is going to make them look more professional? So I think it's really important that we have our values, we know who we are, and we stick to that, right? We very much so say, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. This is our, we want to make sure that 17 has is in depth, but it is still easy to use, right? And nothing is going to be super easy to use, but we want to make it easy enough for somebody to get on and get moving quickly.
Right. Well, and even with the level that it's right now, I would imagine that your feedback is the same as mine, and it's the number one thing I hear is like, I don't even know where to start. So like,
Yeah.
what's your advice for that? Because I think there's a lot of people that either have a system and the idea of switching to a different system seems really overwhelming, or they have no system and that seems even more overwhelming. Like the chaos is more comforting than starting a new way. So what's your advice?
Yeah, 100%. I totally see that myself. So, first off, I think we have to recognize that mindset wise is that change, while scary, is good, right? So, every time you get on there, you just have to kind of recognize that change, while scary, is good, right? Change means you're growing. So, while you might be nervous and you might be scared about it, just know that this is a growing path, and this nervousness is going to take you to somewheres of a place of excellence, right? So, I think the first thing is to adjust the mindset. Second, I think you have to understand that not everything, or when starting, you have to come in with that mindset of not everything has to be done in a day, a week, a month, or 3 months, or 6 months. This is a process and this is a journey, and you're in this for a long haul. You don't go and lose weight overnight, right? I want to lose 10 pounds. That's not going to happen in a day or a week or a month, even for me. And I'm going to have to make some changes because I want to be healthier, right? Same thing. You want your business to be healthier, you're going to have to make some changes. And those changes can be day by day, week by week, month by month, whatever. They can be as little or as aggressive or as easy as you want them to be. Some people want to be super aggressive, right? If you think about losing weight, you're super aggressive. You go to the gym, you get a personal trainer, you're doing it every day. Same thing with 17 hats. If you want to make changes for your business, you want to be super aggressive. You're going to hire a coach. You're going to be working on the system every day. But if you just want to make lifestyle changes for losing weight, I might change my meal plan, or, take a walk every day. It's the same thing with 17 hats. If I want to start really easy, then maybe I'm just going to get my contacts in. I'm going to get my contacts. I'm going to put them in. I'm going to put my projects in. Maybe the first thing is putting your existing um, projects or services on the calendar so you don't start overbooking. Or maybe just looking, okay, these are the 5 hot to-dos I need to do. Let me just send out my invoices. Let me just send out my contracts. So I always feel like if you are not a super process-oriented person, then just start doing your to-dos. I have an invoice to send out. Let me put my contact in, let me create a project, and let me create an invoice and send it out, right? That is a step. And I think we have to look at it. All of these little steps are going to add up to something extraordinary. And I think you have to trust that process. You have to trust the system. You have to trust us as creators. Trust you, Sarah, as mentor and somebody educator, right? Somebody educating the balloon world. And just know that each little step is progress. Don't think, oh, I just sent an invoice, I'm not using it. You are using it. We just have to continue. It is one step to a long journey.
Well, I always tell people, like, don't get distracted by the bells and whistles. I feel like people go
No,
in there and they're like, I want to get my entire business automated. I'm like, okay, but
no.
like you don't even have a contact form on your website. So like you're just not there yet. So I always say, like, get the contact form on your website and
Yes,
watch those folders grow, and that in itself is worth it. Like, I think of it as like a digital filing cabinet. Just having
right.
all of my contacts and all of their stuff in a little folder magically is like, that is worth it. I always tell people too, I'm like, just buy the highest plan and commit to using it. And like
That's
that's the biggest thing. I think it's so much harder to be kind of like living in both worlds. Like, I'm
right.
still using a Google Calendar and pen and paper, and then I'm
Mhm.
collecting checks, and it's like, just go for it.
Yeah, you do, because once, I mean, that is the power of the system, is once you have everything in one place, the things that you can do are truly amazing. I mean, I don't even want to talk about all those things because it would overwhelm you. But the first step is to get started. The first step is to get your contacts in, get your projects in, and, start getting I always say, get the hot to-dos done. You have contracts and invoices and quotes, get those done. Then I agree with you, get the lead capture form up or the online scheduling app, right? So I love lead capture form because you're right. You start pulling those leads in, they start coming into the new system, which allows you to transition out of whatever old system you were using,
Right.
right? If you still take your leads the old way, then you're not transitioning out of your old way. So you're always going to kind of be stuck in limbo.
Yeah, and
So,
I think the lead capture form is such an easy way because, like, you're
mhm,
still, if before you were just getting an email with that information, you still will get an email with the information. It just will also be in another beautiful, organized location that you can like click in and save inspiration photos and see contracts. Like, I just like I live on the app, like on my phone. Just the power of being able to be like, oh nope, see, you said it was an 11 o'clock delivery, and here it is in writing on my phone.
that is so true, because I mean, before I joined 17 Hats, I was a photographer, and I woke up every morning with 17 Hats. 17 Hats stayed on my dashboard throughout the whole day. Everything, if I had a note, if I called, if I had to call a client back and they didn't pick up, I just made a note inside of their project of, hey, left a message, this is what the message said, because I was so tired of trying to remember all of these details and forgetting them.
Yeah. I
So,
my worst nightmare is what a lot of people do to run their entire business, which is all Instagram DMs. That's how they run
no,
everything. And I'm like, I would screw up so bad, so fast. Like, it would just, I would go out of business overnight. I don't know why people do that to themselves.
I don't think people realize the difficulty and the stress that they're putting on themselves. I really don't. If you're listening to this and you do that, I promise you, you might not feel stressed, but if you were to move over to 17 Hats and do it that way, you would be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this sooner? We've all had those moments in life that you're like, I should have done this a year ago, or I should have done this 2 years ago. This is definitely one of those.
Absolutely. Well, like, I'm a big I guess, like, I don't even know, not like work life balance, but like I love working. But like I like making changes that improve my quality of life.
For
And
sure.
like that mental clutter for me, it's like nothing is worth it. Like nothing is worth that level of stress and clutter and chaos. And that's why I think people look at me, they're like, how are you able to do this by
Yeah.
yourself? It's like, well, because blowing up balloons isn't hard. The hard stuff is being late to jobs and forgetting what the colors are and never knowing where stuff is. Like, that's where the chaos comes from. So I feel like people think they're working harder than they maybe are because they are working hard, but it's all mental, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should be able, as a business owner or solopreneur, you should be able to focus on your passion. And for us in this podcast, it's about, having those beautiful balloon designs and being able to service your clients to the highest quality, because that's how they're going to talk about you. That is you servicing them and doing everything in a way that is professional and relatable and authentic, and being your most authentic you when you show up. to provide your service, that is marketing in itself. People are going to like you, people are going to talk about you, and you are going to grow that way. So everybody's always like, I need a market, I need a market. And my question is always like, well, are you servicing your clients to the best of your potential? Are you showing up to a job stressed?
Right.
Because
Right.
even if you don't feel stress, people can feel the vibrating tension coming off of you
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, especially when you're doing like, yeah, someone told me this and it's so true. They call it rage decorating. Like when they're mad at the client or they're running late or whatever. And there's this like mania around it where it's just like, this is not a good vibe.
Yeah, because you're coming into that scene with all of this stuff bouncing around your head. There is no way that you can sit there and fully give your attention to the clients that you're servicing.
Yeah.
And so when you're able to separate those and just be able to walk in and service your client to provide that experience and talk to them and joke with them and laugh with them and love on them, right? That is a form of marketing, the easiest because it's the least expensive form of marketing too that you can do, but you have to be able to offload all of that stuff in your head to somewhere else, and that somewhere else, that's why we created 17 hats,
Yeah.
right? That's the whole purpose of it, right? And like you said, if you still are using other apps, right? All of that stuff is still bouncing around in your head,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's why you
Right.
put it all in one place. The system is designed to work together. You can offload all that chaos into the app and you can show up and truly work, be there, be present in your service. And that is the best thing that you can do for your business.
And once you get over that initial overwhelm, like
Mhm.
I've been using it for like, I want to say 5 years. And just this past year, I really started utilizing the calendars. And actually, it wasn't even me. I hired a friend to kind of help because I was getting overwhelmed. And she just like took on 17 hats. She just like became an expert. And now she has her own business where she onboards people
Nice.
on 17 hats. And um, so yeah, Nicole's awesome. Everyone on the podcast knows about her. Let Nicole
Yeah.
help.com. Because I think she has this advantage as coming in as like not the business owner and
Mhm.
making just like really smart observations of
Yes.
like, this seems redundant or this seems weird. But she got my calendars up and running. So now I can see like, if it's orange, it's just a request. If it's yellow, I've invoiced. If it's green, and like again, that took 5 years to get to that point. So I think people hear that and they're like, yeah, I want that too. And it's like, oh, but there's so much you have to do
There is.
first that will also help you. Like it will be just as beneficial.
Well, you have to invest in yourself too. At some point in time, you have to go, okay, am I okay with the life that I'm living or am I ready for a change?
Yeah.
Right. And I always say, if you're going to step up and play ball, step up and play ball. Like if you're ready and if we're going to do this, let's go. Right. So I think that there is a bit of you have to get to that mindset change. I mean, just like anything, right? I can sit there and play with Play Doh or play with clay all day long, right? But until and I'm an art background, so this is why I always use this one. I can sit there and play with clay all day long, but until I decide to make a sculpture isn't going to be automatically made,
Yeah.
right? So my playing with clay isn't going to make a sculpture, and it's the same thing with 17 hats. Somebody's sitting in there going, okay, I'm just going to mess with this, and go in there with the mindset of trying it out. It's not going to. You're going to be able to utilize the system, sure. You're going to be able to send out, but are you going to be able to utilize it to the fullest? Absolutely not,
Yeah.
right? So you do have to have the mindset of, going to 17 Hatch University, learning, taking our getting started workshops that we have, possibly hiring a mentor. But I think the biggest thing is too, once you start utilizing the system and getting familiar with it, like what is a lead capture form and understanding how invoices work and quotes and contracts. And once you start to understand how a lot of the system works, it is sitting down and going, okay, what is my process?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When a lead comes in, what do I do? What do I do next? Right. And writing out that process and documenting that process as well. Because I mean, that process is going to guide you to what you need to do in 17 hats. And so having that, blocking off that day or blocking off that week to go, I'm going to work on my process this week and writing down all of those steps of everything that you do. I mean, every little bitty step.
Yeah, that's such a good point too, because I feel like again, people want to start and finish this process on the same day. But like starting the process is like, right, okay, you get a lead. What is
Mhm.
your response? And I would say a lot of people, it's like, well, what do you, I mean, what do you mean? Like, I just respond to the email. Like, I type it out. It's like, no, like, what's the next step after that? Like, then you confirm your availability. Then what? It's like, well, then I don't know. I wait and I hear what they want. And it's like, you don't have a process yet. So you can't
Correct.
automate it. Like, you can't, a robot's not just going to create it for you. You
Yeah.
have to train it.
If you cannot talk about your process, you don't have a process. Right. I think that is if you can sit down and say, this is everything I do, then you have a process. If you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, then you're not understanding of your process yet. You might have one, but you're just not understanding of it yet.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, and I think the other thing to remember is that your process is going to grow and change as you grow and change. As you get started, your process might be somebody calls me, I talk to them on the phone, we clarify what they want, I write it down in my notebook, I build it, and they pay me upon delivery. That is a process. It's a very simple process, right? But it is a process. You have determined steps that you do, right? But as you grow, they might email you. You might send them an email back. They will respond with an email. You will send them a quote or an invoice, or you will call them, right? So as you grow with each, I think as you learn more and more about being a solopreneur, about your profession, about what you provide, as you hone all of that in, because that in itself takes 3 or 4 years to do, right? So as you know, who you are as you start versus who you are 4 years in, it's very different. So as you start to hone all of that in, your process is going to become more streamlined. So I don't think you shouldn't worry about like, man, my process, I don't have these 500 steps or I don't have these 50 steps, right? That's okay. You have a process. Start with what you have. Because the cool thing about 17 Hats is that 17 Hats will grow with you as you figure out your process more, you outline your process more, you add those steps in. And I think
Absolutely.
that's
Well,
okay.
a good example of that for me is like for years, again, maybe like 3 or 4 years, I didn't have any like follow-up process. It was like
Mhm.
they send an inquiry, I say I'm available, and then they ghost me, and then I just kind of wait, and then uh the end, and it took years for me to be like, wait, why am I not sending follow-ups? First of all, because I'm losing track of them.
Yep.
Second of all, because it's awkward and I don't really have them pre-designed. So yeah, one day I sat down and I wrote follow-up number 1, and then I wrote follow-up number 2, which I call the breakup email, because
Yeah.
it doesn't leave it hanging. It ends the conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it looks like you've gone a different direction. Keep us in mind for future events.
Correct.
Have a great day. And that way they don't call like the day before their party being like, no, I thought I booked you. It's like, no, you never even responded to me. But it
Correct.
gets them out of my mental clutter.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I always say I didn't create it. Actually, it was somebody a long time ago said the money's in the follow up, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to, I think, we as business owners, we do this every day. Like we provide, we serve, we do this every day. For a lot of people coming to your business, this is the first time they're doing this, right? They don't do this every day. And they also have a life. So your business is not the most important thing that's happening in their life. And so a lot of times they send out an inquiry because they have a moment of energy rush,
Yeah.
right? A moment of excitement. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, they're always at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I'm going to do this at 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm excited about it, because mentally I have enough mental energy to be excited about it right now. I would think, especially you guys are dealing with a lot of like moms with birthday parties and everything else, right? So they have enough mental energy to like be excited about it. They want, a quick response. And because they're excited about it right there at that moment, if you don't meet them with excitement at that moment, you've lost them.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that is why it's so important, right? When you use 17 Hats lead capture forms, you can send out an email automatically with next steps,
Yep.
which I love because you're meeting them at the moment of excitement,
Mhm.
right? If
Absolutely.
they send it to you at 1 o'clock in the morning and you respond at 9 o'clock in the morning, right after they dropped all the kids off from school, you are not meeting them at the moment of your excitement. So the percentage of closure has just dropped by like 50%.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So I always tell people, if you're wanting, I mean, the number one thing you can do to start, if you're getting leads that you're not responding to immediately, the number one thing you can do to start closing more leads is responding to them at the point of excitement, which is the point that they contact you.
That's so smart. Yeah. And I think, like, just to clarify too, I think, again, people get ahead of themselves and they're like, well, I don't want to confirm if I don't know if I'm available. It's like, I don't confirm. I just say, like, I'm so excited to work with you. I'll confirm in the next 24 hours. You can gather inspiration here. Here's our color chart. Here's what you can expect moving forward. Like, and I almost kind of prompt them with some urgency so they know that I'm not going to, like, hem and haw over their $100 order for 3 weeks. Cause
Exactly.
some people are a little too excited.
Yeah. Well, and my favorite process is always, and I've teach this process and I've seen this process work for so many industries because people like to share their thoughts and their opinions, right? And I think balloon artists are probably the same as photographers. When somebody inquires, they also have this Pinterest board of everything that they want,
Yeah, right.
right? And so, and while the Pinterest board can sometimes drive us a little crazy, I think if you talk about that Pinterest board a little bit and get it out of their head, then it leaves. If you never acknowledge that Pinterest board, then it's always going to be there in the back of their mind. And then there's a possibility you don't live up to their Pinterest board. So then if you can exit it out of their brain, I feel like you set yourself up for a better, a more successful service, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the systems that I love to teach is they submit a lead capture form. And from that lead capture form, you can send an email, but you also send a questionnaire. And I like the questionnaire to be no more than 5 questions because more than five is mentally challenging, right? Your
Mhm.
brain can read five without thinking. Anything more than five, your brain takes on as stress. Okay. So for lead capture forms, no more than 5 questions. This first questionnaire, no more than 5 questions, because otherwise it's just an obstacle. It's just a
Yeah.
hurdle. And so I like to ask on that questionnaire, like, what is your party theme colors? What's the theme? What's the colors? What's this? What are those? What's your Pinterest board link, right? What are those 5 questions that you can ask that you can get all of their ideas out of their heads, but you could also look at and be like, yes, this is a right client for me, or no, this is not the right client for me. You can ask, what's your budget? There's a variety of different questions you can ask. Location. So you have that information up front and you can read it and be like, yes, this is a good client. We're good.
Mhm.
Let's continue. Or, ooh, this is not going to be a good client. I'm going to go ahead and stop the conversation now.
Yeah.
Because we all know that there are some of those clients that they want everything for nothing,
Yeah.
or they have really high expectations that are just not realistic. And if you can catch those early, you set yourself up for a better result later.
Yeah, I think that's some of the fun too with being able to manipulate everything in 17 hats, like little tweaks in the questions you ask or little, turns of phrases gets like a different result from
Yeah.
people. It's almost like you kind of study human behavior a little bit. It's like, ooh, like people are really responding to
Yeah.
this change in words, or like people are clearly not understanding what I'm asking here
Yeah.
because no one's doing it.
Yes. And I think that is so important. I do believe that after every client, especially when you're just getting started, you're putting systems in, or if you're wanting to grow or level up, you really have to look at your clients and go, okay, at the end of the service, what questions did they have? Were they happy? Were they not happy? And you have to think about why. And then you have to think about how could you have cleared up that communication from the beginning? What little small verbiage changes? Maybe you need an extra email. So when you
Mhm.
start really getting, and this is going to be later for all of you on the
Right.
process journey, right? This is at the end, right, of this process journey. You have to think about, okay, what can I change? What can I adjust to make things clearer, to make things more understandable, more relatable? Because you're right. It's a small change in words that can make all the difference. It's you know everything that they read is important, and a lot of people don't read, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes it's, I always believe you got to meet them with the communication where they're at. Are you giving information too early? Are you giving information too late? Right? If it's not relevant to them, I know a lot of people wanting to give so much information in their leads process right when they've been contacted, right? You just want to like dump all of this information, but only 10% of that information is relevant. But you've just
Yeah.
overwhelmed them And so now they're at, they can't make a decision. They don't know what to do. Everything seems too overwhelming,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so it is, looking at your process and going, what do they need to know now? Only giving that information and making sure it's in a very tweaked and understandable way.
Very cool. Well, and I know we've talked a lot about like the beginners, the like
Yeah.
overwhelm, and but there are a lot of people listening that are like very seasoned 17 hats users. So like what are maybe some little nuggets for them? Like do you have a favorite feature? Do you have something that like you wish more people used but like it's underutilized and it's such a cool feature. Like I'm totally putting you on the spot,
No,
but
no.
if you have anything for some of ththose more proficient users.
So I think there's a feature that I showed just the other day, and people were like, oh my gosh. And it's a feature that I used so much, and it's such a small feature. But inside of questionnaires, you can map the answer to notes.
Okay.
So if it's a questionnaire and I ask, what is give me a description of your party theme, maybe, and they describe it on the questionnaire, press send, their answer is going to be added into an individual note in a project. What I
Okay.
love about that is if you get on a phone call with them for a consult or whatever, and I might say to you, "Hey Sarah, you said this. You said your party theme is this. Can you dive into that a little bit more?" What I love about that is I can open that note and I can add more information to that note.
Mm.
So I get enough information from them from the questionnaire to start the conversation and to know, yes, this is a client that I want to work with. But as more information surfaces about that detail, I can add it directly to that note.
Yeah, that is a good tip. I like that.
So I love that questionnaire to notes, and then I can just add on to it because I'm a big believer on getting stuff out of your head and written down. I'm also a big believer in when you see your clients being able to service them in the way they wish to be serviced in creating that personalization without deviating from your system. So,
Yeah.
being able, when you go to the doctor, right? They walk in and they're like, "Hey, Amanda, how are you? It's been so long, blah, 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 blah." And they know all this stuff about you. And I'm like, there is no way you remember all this stuff about me.
I
Right?
know.
You have so many clients. But the reality is they read the chart before they come in.
Yeah.
Right. And so because they read the chart before they come in and welcome you with this authenticity and this just sweetness. Right. Um, and we need to do the same thing for our clients. Right. Our clients like to tell us lots of stuff. Have any of you been on the calls where they just keep talking about all of their personal lives and everything? Right.
Yeah.
They like to tell us and share with us their lives. And if we can make a note about that so that the next time we see them, we're like, oh, how is your son been? Right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
be
and I
able to
think for
address
us,
their names.
it's important and it's also
Huge.
it's easy. I mean, because like we are in charge of celebrating their milestones. Like we
Yeah,
are at their biggest, best
yeah,
events, but like not caring if it's your daughter's graduation or your son's graduation, like that's kind of a big deal. And like we
yeah.
would easily forget, but like that's important. Or like the next time being like, oh, how's he doing at Notre Dame? Like remembering that, which they don't know that we do 50 graduation parties a month and I have no idea where everyone's going, but that is
It's
that's a cool.
remembering that. I think another thing, especially for balloon artists who usually, I would assume, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably do parties for all the different siblings sometimes, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
as a high school senior portrait photographer, right? I would photograph the first child and the second child and the third child and the fourth child. But it's really important if that is something that is important, it's important for me to know, oh, it's 2022, or 2023 next year. Child number two is going to be graduating. Let me reach out to them early. And I love to use tags for that.
Okay.
I love to use tags. I would tag a contact tag with, 2023 graduate, right? Or 2025 graduate.
Yeah.
So when I get to 2024, at about this time, right? May, June 2024, I'm going to pull all of my 2025 graduates and I'm going to shoot out those, families an email that says, hey, book me now.
That is so smart. Okay, and that leads into one of the things that I haven't seen anyone doing this well.
Mhm.
In 17 hats, in another system, anywhere. Like, I think because we're so focused on the individual event or project. It's like we get the lead capture form. It's for a graduation. The graduation comes, it goes, and then we archive that project.
Yeah.
But then I don't have any system like what you just mentioned. The project is done, but the client is still there. Like, what is your recommendation to like then keep, not lose track of them, or like follow up in a year, or maybe it's a corporate event and it's every year, or maybe it's just a big fish that you just want to reach out to a couple times a year. Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I know anyone in the balloon world who has a great, more like contact, like
Correct.
customer contact system.
Yeah, so I'm gonna spitball here. I've tried some of these, and I haven't tried others. So I'm just gonna spitball with some ideas that I have for you, and you can take it or leave it. Um, One of the things that I have seen done, or I've done well, is that if it's a corporate event per se, and I know that they're having one next year, when I archive that project, I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to start a new project
Ah,
for it. I'm going to call it Corporate Event 2023. I'm going to tag it 2023, right? So I know that that's when it's happening. I might even tag it as like internal lead because it's like they haven't actually reached out to me, but I know this is something that's happening. So
right.
internal
Okay.
lead. And then I can either this is really advanced. I'll give a not
Is it like
advanced.
a pre-workflow?
Yes, I'll give
Oh
a
my gosh, I just
not
connected the
advanced.
dots.
So you can actually set a workflow and set your base date. So if you want to contact him January 1st, you set a workflow with a base date of January 1st, and you can have it send automatically or a manual send. So it's going to pop up and say, hey, you have this to send, this email,
Interesting.
and you can adjust it if you need to, or you can have it send automatically. So you can have that project kind of running in the background. So that is one way of doing it. You could also just set yourself a to do of
Yeah.
reach out to this person, right? So if you don't want to do it the advanced way with workflow, just set yourself a to do, reach out to see if they, need anything.
No, I love that workflow idea though. I don't think that's so advanced because the people who would do this already are using workflows. And I have like my onboarding workflow and then I have my archive or my invoice through archive.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything after that. But instead of having it after, it's like a before. It's I like the idea of starting the new project and launching a pre-workflow of like
Yep.
getting the business back.
Well,
That is so smart.
you don't want to do like marketing emails, right? Because
No,
sometimes
right,
it's not
right.
a marketing platform. Remember that. Sometimes it's not a marketing platform. We do not have an unsubscribe. We don't have anything like that. So don't make sure you're not doing marketing emails, but you can absolutely touch base back then again and say, hey, I know this is happening. Would love to help you out, right?
Oh,
And
I
I would
love
like
that.
I said I would do it in a new project.
And then you can tag them too. So right on your project's dashboard, you could
Yeah,
see that this isn't an inquiry. This is like whatever else you're going to call it, like hot
yeah,
lead, internal lead or
yeah,
something.
absolutely.
Oh man, you just changed my life. I'm so excited. Because I'm always nervous about that. And I know I lose people because like all of a sudden you book up and you're like, shoot, this like multi-thousand-dollar corporate party is always this weekend. Why did I forget? And who's in charge now? Like, oh, that's such a good idea.
Absolutely. So we can do that. I've seen people do this with birthdays and anniversaries, right? They just do an email. They do a birthday project with an email that sends same thing on their base date and then sends every, 365 days after.
Yeah.
So I've seen that done a lot. So that like kind of separate project seems to work.
Yeah,
But
because then you could
also,
sort it because you could go in and sort by tag and only see your internal leads versus seeing your because someone told me this was a tip that someone gave me a couple of years ago and I didn't like it that my last step of my workflow could be scheduling that email for like 9 months from now. send
Yep.
it and then archive. But then I'm like, but then I don't know what's happening in the
Yeah.
background. And I don't like that.
You want to archive, right? If you're
Yeah.
done with a project, you want to archive a project and get that project off.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you would want to start a new project because you want to see, even on that new project, you want to be able to trace that new project through the beginning to the end, right? You want to keep all the communications together. So
Right.
if that email's in the old project, then we
You're
don't
never
have
even
a
going to see
clean
it.
start for the new project.
And if they respond, I'll be like, who are you?
Right. Yeah. So you start that new project with them and you go about it that way. So the new project is really helpful. Like I said, I've seen it done with birthdays. I've seen it done with follow-ups. The same thing with if you know like a sibling is graduating, like I like to, as I talk to clients, I like to get to know their family because I do feel like the more you feel like a part of their family, the more they're going to use you, the more they're going to, right? I do think there's a boundary, right? That's
Yeah.
another discussion for another day. There is a boundary there. Okay. But if you can get to know them as a family instead of as somebody who pays you money, then you're going to get to know the different children, you know, you're going to get to know their style, and then you can create those tags, accordingly, um, so that you can remember to, help out in other times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I personally like to remind people like we don't need that many customers. Like
Well,
how many clients do you really need? Like I mean, 300 would be what, one a day? Like that's a
it's busy.
lucrative business. So
Yeah.
I feel like people want every single job, every single lead, and it's like if you just invest in the people that already like you and trust you, you really don't have to market ever.
And that's the biggest thing, is that I think that's so important as a solopreneur business, is that you're not constantly catching new fish, right?
Mhm.
You're helping out your core group. And yes, some of your core group is going to churn out or leave you, but then you're going to have those few new come in. So you should have that kind of, 80-20 rule.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between a new client versus repeat, it's like night and day. Like I just came from an install this morning and it's an event planner who uses me for everything. And it's like the notes were like blue and white. I was like, wait a minute. What? Like it was just they don't care. They just trust me.
I
Yeah.
trust you. And I think too, to be able to build those corporate clients that are more of the repeat business as well, and to be able to go in and talk to stores and just figure out how you can help some of those more corporate clients too. Those are really good repeat clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have good contacts also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Do you miss the creative side at all? Do you still photograph or
I don't. I did photography for many years. I taught high school art. I was
Oh,
an
you
art
did? Did I know that?
teacher.
I taught high school art. That was my first career.
That's amazing. I taught high school AP art history and AP art courses. And then I started my photography career. I found with 17 hats joining Donovan in this company, um, I found that I can put all the things that I'm good at together.
Mhm.
I do a lot of our product design. So
Okay.
that's our creative outlet, or my creative outlet. And then I love educating and I love teaching. And so, I can do that through podcasts and webinars and different things like that. So, I think that this is a really good balance of, photography I didn't get to teach, and with teaching I didn't get to do photography. So I think this is a really good balance of all of the gifts I've been blessed with.
Yeah, I feel totally the same about the podcast too. I'm like, I feel like as when you go out on your own, you're like, oh, but I have like a college degree and like this is silly. But I'm like, wait a minute, my degree is in art education, and I have an artistic podcast where I teach people. But it's like it couldn't be more perfect, and you just kind of
Correct.
find it along the way, you know?
Absolutely. And I think, the core value in me that I love so much is helping people. I really do. And
Mhm.
I saw that with photography, and I saw that with teaching. When I look at the one thing that I loved about that the most is helping people succeed and being able to see the light, right? Being able to see the light inside of them, their gifts inside of them, their talents inside of them. I love nothing more than getting an art student in that was like, I cannot draw. And then at the end of the year being like, I'm going to art school,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being into RISD, or one of the Otis, one of the big art schools. That was like the most amazing thing for me. And it was so fun to do. And so I feel like I get to do that here, which fills a huge, huge passion of mine.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. And so I think it's really important for people to hear you and like the person behind the brand. I think sometimes we're a little spoiled by like McDonald's and Amazon, and we're just like we just assume these companies are humongous and everything is Google. And it's like, no, there's people there and they're great and they're helpful and it's
Well,
nice.
I appreciate that. I appreciate being on. I love talking to you. Congratulations on all the amazing things you're doing in your business and the podcast. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If you've listened to any episodes of this podcast, you know that I think the most important part of running a balloon business is the customer experience. I like making it easy for my customers to purchase from me and pay me. I like making the process clear, and I like being really approachable and easy to talk to, which is why as a customer, I love receiving that same treatment when I shop for balloons. I love having a party wholesale because they take care of me as their client. They always have recommendations. They treat me with respect. They know the industry, and they make it easy for me to shop and pay. So if you are in need of a balloon distributor or just want to check them out, click the link in the show notes and let them know that the Bright Balloon sent you. Thanks for joining me in this week's episode. As usual, I tried to keep it bright and light in a few minutes or less. If you wish there were more episodes, you are in luck. You can join us in our Patreon group for our monthly book club. I record weekly episodes guiding you through a different self-development book each month. For as little as $3 a month, you can join more than 50 other balloon business owners in our private group. Click the link in the show notes to join us. So many of you have reached out and told me how the podcast has changed your business, and I love hearing those stories. But you might be ready to take things to the next level. If that's you, you should check out the laser-focused solopreneur course where I walk you through more than 2 hours of video content showing exactly how I run my business as a solopreneur. I run a 6-figure balloon business, I work a full-time job, I have a toddler, and I produce this podcast weekly. And it's not because I'm more efficient than anybody else, it's just because I apply this laser-focused framework to every decision that I make. If you're struggling with work-life balance, figuring out how to grow your business in a manageable way, and feeling like there just aren't enough hours in the day, this course is for you. Check it out using the link in the show notes.